A lot has been said about the transformative power that music can have on the psychedelic experience. This was first noted by the early scientific researchers in the 50s and 60s who were developing what we would now call psychedelic therapy. In the modern psychedelic renaissance, this is being studied scientifically to be applied to these guided psychedelic therapy sessions. The reason why the so-called psychedelic renaissance is so needed is because our culture, specifically in the United States, is facing a huge mental health crisis. People are lost in neuroses and PTSD and all sorts of things like that. Because the early psychedelic research was outlawed in the 60s due to the immoral war on drugs and cultural reactionism, people haven't been able to get the help that they need. Aside from what's been going on in the underground, this just hasn't been accessible for the people who really need it. For a lot of these mental health issues that people are facing, that typical treatments aren't working for them, this can be the one thing that does work.
How do you feel? Well, I feel very fine. I feel very buoyant and light and resilient. I feel as though this chair is not as solid as it seems to be.
If we don't get these people the help that they need and deserve, it's only going to get worse. But luckily, the winds of change are beginning to blow and psychedelic laboratories are opening their doors. New research centers are being built specifically for this purpose, and we seem to be on the eve of full decriminalization and the revival of legal psychedelic guided therapy. As of the filming of this video, psychedelic therapy has officially been legalized in the states of Colorado and Oregon, as well as the city of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Because this research was banned or made really difficult to conduct for nearly 50 years, we have a lot to catch up on. Luckily, our best people are on the job and things are starting to emerge. I'm going to share with you some of the latest info from the studies and research about music in psychedelic therapy. So whether you're on a psychonaut's journey or taking a guided psilocybin session, music can play a huge role in your journey. It can affect your visuals, it can lead you to insights, and it can even lead to the highest mountaintop of peak mystical experience. One of the scientific researchers who knows the most about this subject is a guy from the UK called Mindell Kaelin. I'm going to be referring to a lot of his ideas and studies in this video, so I'm going to be linking to all of that in the description too, including this interesting study that was about LSD and music. According to this study, LSD combined with music affects this region of the brain called the parahippocampus. This brain region is not, in fact, a kind of college campus for hippos, but it's involved in mental imagery and memories. With LSD and music, this part of the brain shows a heightened connection to the visual cortex. In other words, these parts of the brains start talking to each other more. And also in their study, they noticed that the more these regions were connected, the more intense and vivid the visuals they saw. So us psychonauts know that music can have a powerful effect on our visuals and the direction of our trip. Well, this is scientific validation of the things that we have already experienced. Knowing how this works will allow scientists to understand how music and psychedelics interact and use that information to create even more effective healing for people who are using psychedelics in therapy, or for psychonauts to utilize this understanding to create a better outcome for themselves. Nearly every indigenous culture that has psychedelic rituals use some type of music. The two most notable examples I can think of are the Icaros sung by the ayahuasca shamans and the Bwiti harp music used in iboga ceremonies, which is really cool and crazy music, by the way. It's sick. These songs play a vital role in grounding someone's energy during a psychedelic experience, and it helps guide them into a positive and transformational state of mind. The right music can be a super supportive presence when people are going through some very difficult personal work on themselves. Music also has this anxiety relief function, which can help people stay calm as things begin to get more intense in their experience, which can then lead to more positive outcomes for everybody. So a problem does come up with picking music for psychedelic experiences because music is such a personal thing. Everyone has their different likes and dislikes. So when you're studying it scientifically, how are you going to find something that works for everybody? The answer is you really can't. But they have found some qualities of music that lead to more positive outcomes generally. So I'll be sharing some of the information about that. I'll tell you what Mendel Kaling thinks, and then I'll tell you what I think. And we're both coming at this as musicians, I should add. So out of all the songs that they played for these participants in this other study, they found something interesting. The songs that were liked the most were also the ones that were least familiar to the people listening. Mendel explained that if you're too familiar with the music, it can prevent you from having a new experience since you've already had experiences with that song before. I can understand this to a degree, but I think that even songs that you are familiar with can take on a totally new life and sound totally different than what you've ever experienced them as. And playing things that are all unfamiliar to you is kind of a gamble. You don't know if you're gonna like it or if it could lead you down a negative path. So maybe the sweet spot is to find music that you're only kind of familiar with. I've had some powerful experiences with music that I really only listened to 1 or 2 times before. So maybe there's a little bit of a sweet spot there. So one of the other things they found about the songs that were the most powerful and effective is they found these specific emotions seemed to do the trick for everybody. The emotions in the songs that people liked most when they were tripping had feelings of wonder, transcendence, tenderness, and power. Ever since I read this piece of information, I tried to make my tripping playlist based on these emotions. They added that in particular, the feelings of wonder and transcendence were directly related to an outcome of having that peak mystical experience. Mendel also designed a playlist that follows the arc of a mushroom trip. And he points out that at different stages in your trip, you have different needs to be met so that the music can be there as a calming agent whenever you're coming up and you're feeling anxious. And then as you're starting to trip, the music gets more rhythmic. And then when you're at your peak, the music alternates in a pendulum between something super emotional and intense, but then it also gives you little breaks so you can kind of reflect on that. So it goes from peak emotion to calm, letting you kind of reflect, and then back and forth again during your peak.
Because you have tears in your eyes. Oh. Is that a beautiful experience, would you say?
I would say yes.
One of the major takeaways Mendel had from this study was that although there's a universality to music, it's impossible to create a standardized playlist that will work for everybody. So he suggested that in the future, therapists will probably need to find a way to adapt to the changing needs and emotions of their tripping patient. Moving forward, that's something that he's working on, and he's even developing an app that I've been hearing about called Wave Paths, which is this kind of evolving musical thing that is supposed to be kind of like what I'm talking about. In the video that I'll link in the description, Mendel talks about how music while you're tripping can create such a huge variety of different experiences. And if you are doing a psychedelic therapy session, you want to steer that towards this kind of healing and transformative type of experience instead of something that's just really strange or weird, which is all possible. They also used fMRI scans to find out what kind of other qualities of music affected how people felt when they were tripping. They looked at things like how high or low the pitch was, or if the songs were in a major or a minor key, which have a different kind of emotional quality to them. They found that the most profound and meaningful changes in the brain came with a reaction to the changing of timbre. Timbre can be described as like the sound's texture or the tone palette of the music. You can have stuff that's like this oceanic electronic music, or you can have stuff that's really like biting heavy metal music. That's timbre. I think fans of Spangle are gonna know a bit about that. It's like the fuzzy carpet wall of music. They found the stronger the reaction to the timbre in music, the more likely it would be that they would feel these emotions of wonder and transcendence. And like I mentioned earlier, wonder and transcendence are the emotions most directly linked to peak experience. So in other words, this is one of the keys to triggering a mystical type experience. One of the most prominent reactions that they found was that 88% of these people being studied felt like the music was intensifying their experience, enhancing their emotion, enhancing the visuals and altering the visuals with the music. For 79% of them, the music provided a source of guidance, like it resonated with their inner state of being, or it was taking them on a journey. The music provided grounding and safety for the people to keep calm. However, there is a flip side to all of this. We talked about how hard it is to find the right music for everyone. Well, here's a list of some of the negative reactions that they found. We heard earlier about how music intensifies people's experience. Well, that also applies for whenever the experience is uncomfortable or the mental imagery is unwelcome. Some people also felt the opposite of being guided by the music, like the music was leading them into a place they didn't want to go, like the music was out of sync with their inner experience. This is super fascinating to me, and it makes me wonder if we need to find a really good way of understanding what our current emotional state is and be able to adjust very on the fly with our music. Or maybe if there's a therapist or a trip sitter, they're the ones to be able to recognize that and make the changes. So let's take an overview of what music can do in psychedelic therapy. It can facilitate peak experiences. And these peak experiences are most indicative of a positive, healing, therapeutic outcome. It can facilitate autobiographical insightfulness. In other words, it can help you tell a more powerful version of the story you tell about yourself. Because music also has this calming and relaxing side to it, it can calm people down to allow them to be in the present moment. And people being in the present allows for more spontaneous things to emerge. Psychedelics and music combined create something that is deeply meaningful and personal. The depth of this experience predicts the therapy outcomes. And this is vastly different than conventional forms of therapy and psychiatry, which focus on behaviors and brain chemistry. Psychedelics and music work together as a technology to create a learning experience. This is what makes them so unique and powerful as a tool for healing. So let's all do our best to be advocates for the responsible use of psychedelics. These are not a panacea that will heal the entire world, but like Terence McKenna used to say, they're the best game in town. And we can start to heal the world by healing ourselves first. Hey, I hope y'all found something interesting and learned something new in this video. I definitely learned some more while I was doing the research to make it, and I have links to some of the resources I used to make the video in the description below. And I also have in the description ways that you can support the channel directly, which would be super appreciated. And if you want to be part of our little tribe we got going, we have a Discord server. I'll add the link to that too. This has been part 4 in my series on music and psychedelics. So if you haven't caught all the other ones, it's all going to be on this playlist that I'm going to put up here on the end screen about music and psychedelics.